Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Gideon Ojo. I'm currently a data engineer, specializing in building ETL pipelines, setting up databases on premise and on the cloud, uh, doing visualization in Power BI, Tableau, VBA on Excel, and automation in general. So I'm going to walk you through a project that I took on for this insurance company, specifically the investment department of the insurance company, where I've taken a current system that was quite manual, and I've essentially automated the whole thing, whereby before they had to kind of download data on a day-to-day basis manually, store it in an Excel file, append it onto existing data points, and then use pivot tables to kind of visualize that data, create graphs and tables, and essentially make decisions off the back of that. It was quite a tedious, time-consuming, ever-prone method and way of doing things. And they called me in to automate that. So I'll walk you through how that all worked. So this is the company's administrator. So this is where they store a lot of their holding data on the portfolio. And there's a specific table called return report where it has all the return data for different accounts that they hold. And essentially they need this data to be stored in a daily format where essentially you've got all the data for each specific day appended below each other. And the way they would have to do it before was that they would have to enter the account that they want the data for, which is the group account, and put in the date. I'm going to use the 1st of June as an example. Wait for that to load and then click the Excel button, which will download this report in an Excel format as such. So that's the downloaded report for the first. Then they would have to copy this table and paste it in a big Excel spreadsheet where previous data for different dates have been stored, and essentially just create a new column called dates where they would append the actual date for this set of data. And then off the back of that, in that Excel spreadsheet, then they'll use pivot tables and the likes to create their tables and graphs. So it was quite a long-winded process, not to mention the Excel spreadsheet was becoming quite memory intensive, getting slow. So it wasn't an efficient way of doing things. So they called me in to automate that. And the first step was actually to kind of find a way to download data from this website uh, in an autonomous way on a daily basis without any human contact. And also on a demand basis where it's like if they want to get a data set, then they can, type in the date they want data for, and a robot goes in and downloads that data for that specific date. So I use Python to kind of streamline that process. So this is the Python code that I wrote. Essentially, it does, you know, log into the website by itself, download the data for the days that you specify. It then also stores that data temporarily in Excel and then ingest that data into an SQL database. So here's the SQL database. On the code, it's going to run for quite a while, but it has a lot of rows of data. But that's the benefit of doing it in an SQL database. It can store many rows of data, so almost 500,000 rows of data. Whereby if you kept using Excel, it would get quite slow and eventually break down at some point. So I'll run you through how this works. Essentially, if I run the code, so this is going to kick off the process. Now, how I've done it is the end users don't have to see any code or run any code. There is a web page or setup that they can run the whole process. It's quite a user friendly setup, and I will show you that as well. As you can see, the code is logged into the website by itself. It is quite a well, it's quite a long-winded process because I've put in a few pauses and stops just to ensure that it works correctly. You can see my mouse is right here. I'm not going to move it. So right now we're on the main page of the administrator, and I should expect the code to go into the accounting bar and choose the report that's needed, the return report, which is done. Now in my code, I specified that I wanted to run for this specific account, and I've also specified the date range that I need it to run for. And the way they normally like to ingest data into the database is on a single day basis. So it's going to be for one day essentially. I believe it's the 5th of June that I've chosen. Yeah, so the 5th of June. It clicks go, and it's now loading the report. I think the lag is coming from the administrator's side rather than my own. Okay, and now it's downloaded the report. So if I go back to my my Python script, you can see is I've got info messages. This is for my own purposes, just so I know what step the robot's at. As you can see, the last step was that it downloaded the report from the website. So now what I expect it to do next is to obviously that report is stored primarily in Excel. It's stored in a folder. So it's loading the file, and it's found the report right here. And essentially how it works is that if they want to overwrite data for a specific day, which I've done, so the data for the 5th of June already exists in the database. The Python code will look for data which matches the existing dates of the data that I've just downloaded, and it deletes those rows and then ingests the new rows of data into the database. So currently it's deleting those rows from the database, and as a next step, I expect it to essentially ingest the new rows of data. As you can see, I've now got a message saying data has been inserted successfully. Off the back of that, you should expect data to exist in this table for that specific date, which I can easily search up. I think it's the 5th of June, wasn't it? As you can see, the data for the 5th of June is currently in the database, which is quite nice. So once that's stored in the database, the next step was to kind of do some computations of that data. I'm also CFA certified. So essentially I can do in-depth analysis on financial and investment data. So that's what I do in R. So essentially I head into my R interface, or my R studio interface, and I'm actually bringing in the data from the SQL database. I can show you where I do that. So here's me connecting to it. Here's me bringing in that data over here, alongside other data points as well, which I haven't mentioned. And I do a bunch of computations where I'm essentially doing an attribution report. So it's a fixed income, well, it's a portfolio attribution report, but mainly driven or based on the fixed income side of things. I'm not going to go into much detail into what that entails, but essentially, yes, a lot of code, about 3,000, close to 4,000, almost 4,000 lines of code. And essentially, what I do after all of that has been calculated, I then ingest that data, those calculated tables, back into the SQL database. An example of that would be one of these tables here. So asset type returns. So this will be an example of the ingested data coming back into the SQL database. And then once that's done, once I've pull it back inside. I then open up my Power BI workbook, and essentially, well, I create these lovely charts. But those charts have been built off the back of that data in the SQL database. So the source is essentially just the database, the same database where I ingested the data in its raw form. I then linked my R code to the database, brought in those tables, done some computations off the back of those tables, and then ingested those computed tables back into the database, and then essentially linked Power BI to that database, brought in those tables, and built my charts and my graphs off the back of that. And as a result of that, they have useful information. And the good thing about this now is they can filter for any date range, and they can see how the numbers will change and vary off the back of that. So it's quite fast, quite streamlined. Now I've ran each process manually. So essentially, how I've done it now, I'll run my Python code, then I'll run my R code, and I'll essentially run my Power BI code to refresh the Power BI workbook. However, how it normally works is so the end user will never have to actually go into the Python code and click run, or go into the R code and click run. Essentially taken a manual process, streamlined it, made it very autonomous. This Python code runs on a daily basis automatically, I think at 6 p.m. So at 6 p.m. it just downloads data for the most recent date from the Clearwater website and brings it into the SQL database. So essentially, all the end user needs to really do is click refresh on a daily basis, and this data should refresh with the new data. So kind of streamlined that process, saved them a lot of um, errors, and ultimately saved them time. So yeah, thanks for joining me today. If you want to reach out to me about working on projects in the future, I'd be happy to help. Uh, all my details should be in the description below. Cheers. Thank you.